Welcome, Michael. We're absolutely delighted to have you join us on Consciousness Engineering. I've been attending your church in Los Angeles, Agape, many times now with Paul Hoffman, and just blown away by the wisdom that you share from stage. Now, as I mentioned, Michael, we all love to start these interviews with a simple question. What gets you out of bed every morning? What drives you?
What gets me out of bed is I am pulled by a vision. I'm pulled by a vision of what's possible in my own life, meaning I'm always on this adventure of greater discovery of what wants to emerge through me. So I'm very enthused, more than excited. And I'm also pulled by a vision of the possibility of a kind and just global society. I had a major spiritual awakening a number of years ago. I came out of that space with a tremendous enthusiasm to discover, one, what had happened to me, and two, how can I articulate what I had seen. And it's been over 40 years, but it feels like yesterday. I still feel as enthusiastic about the potential of who we are as a species. I feel extremely enthusiastic about the potential of our global society, and that just I'm excited. I'm on an adventure, you see.
And that certainly comes across when you get on stage. It's because you're like a man possessed by the words that flow through you. It's so poetic, and to think that you're like kind of coming up with that on the spot.
Yes.
It's as if you're a speaker / channeler. So I really appreciate that about you. You get, audience members, if you're listening, you get tingles when you see Michael on stage. It's some incredible stuff. I was just telling Michael about how he's one of the best speakers I've ever seen on stage. So Michael, we're going to talk about the idea, the model of reality that the universe is a friendly universe. The universe is progressive. It's progressing, in your words, on its own behalf as our very life. When we shift our awareness to embrace that the universe is for us, our whole life transforms, and the possibilities for expressing our unique gifts and talents unfold in ways we previously could not imagine. So that's going to be our topic today. And Michael is then going to teach us a number of different techniques, from his mindfulness technique, to his method of prayer, to his method of daily meditation, to a method called life visioning. All of these are systems for living that you will be able to take away with. So Michael, let's begin.
The universe is friendly. As I was indicating a number of years ago, I had a spiritual awakening. And I was attending USC. I was on my way to, I was a pre-med student. And I had a series of inner experiences. I won't go through the long details of it. But when I came out of that, I felt totally loved by the entire universe, entire presence. And I saw the immense beauty that was in everything. And I became keenly aware by this visceral experience that the universe is friendly. It is for us. It is seeking our own freedom, that it can come more into its own as us. The universe is the elegant outpicturing of the mind of infinite intelligence, and is progressive because this presence, by whatever name we choose to call it, God, love, life, intelligence, beauty, harmony, it's infinite. And because of its infinite nature, it is always progressing to reflect and to reveal more of its infinite nature. So when we consider that I think just a couple of months ago, the Hubble telescope, they were celebrating its anniversary. And I was listening to scientists on the radio talk about it. And one of the scientists was talking about how when he looked at the universe through the Hubble telescope, and they began to realize that the universe was expanding. And they had no reason why it was expanding. They had no understanding why it was expanding, but it continues to expand. Now that validates that the universe is constantly expanding and constantly being progressive to reflect and to reveal the cosmos in a way that has never happened before. Now here's the deal. Each of us are the universe in miniature. We're a replica of the entire elegance of the universe that's conscious of itself, you see? And so when we begin to understand that the universe is not against us, and that it's not unfriendly, when we begin to understand that we do live in a friendly universe, our perception of reality changes. And instead of thinking that we're going to go out into the world and face all of these obstacles, we move into the world understanding that there are infinite opportunities, possibilities, and just that belief, just that model of reality, that we're surrounded by opportunity, surrounded by possibilities, and that this infinite universe is for us and not against us. We begin to vibrate with such a frequency that the universe matches that frequency. And out of nothing, out of no thing whatsoever, doors open. Opportunities show up for us. Ways that we couldn't see before suddenly become available. Just with the shift of the model of reality. Now, when we have a tendency to think that life is against us, or there's a reluctant deity that's against us or mad at us, we absolutely project that belief onto the screen of life, and we end up experiencing that belief even though it has nothing whatsoever to do with reality. It is simply a model of reality expressed onto the screen of life, and then we experience that model of reality. Now, from a visceral, experiential, insightful way, I experienced the love and the beauty of the universe. More real to me than the very chair I'm sitting on. And that particular dynamic has not abated, not one iota, 40 years later. As a matter of fact, it's increased. My inner experiences that I've had over the years and the things that I've discovered that I've sought to integrate into my awareness has over and over and over again validated that we are truly living and moving and having our beingness in a field of love, intelligence, elegance, order, beauty, harmony, life itself. And so it doesn't make us simply optimistic. It makes us available to an awareness that there's so much good and that our little perception can barely hold it all. So therefore, we're on an adventure to expand perception, to have a greater and greater taste of that which is real, that which is eternal, that which is of this magnificent life that's for us and never against us.
That's beautiful. Michael, one of the things which I find really interesting is that I meet many people who have this experience of, well, to quote Ken Wilber, who's another person who was part of this program, waking up, right? And many people experience it in different ways. For example, 2 days ago, I was having dinner with one of my employees who moved all the way from Slovenia to Malaysia. He sold his company. He decided to come and work at my company, Mind Valley, to promote meditation because he had his waking up experience. And I asked him how it's going, and he said, since giving up so much, coming here, taking a huge cut in his income, he's feeling so happy, so amazing. He feels he made the right choice. So I've seen how this shifts people. But what is that, in your opinion? And can the average person listening to this activate or move towards that experience of waking up, the Satori experience, the experience that you just had?
Yes. Satori, there's two ways. There's Satori and there's Kensho. Satori is an immediate waking up. Suddenly, you see life one way, something happens in your interiority, and you see the way it is. And then Kensho is when it happens slowly. Most people are having a Kensho experience. That is, they're having an incremental insights, and little by little, they see that they're more enlightened today than they were last year. For me, it was a dramatic Satori moment where I could see my connectedness with the presence. I could see my connectedness with all of life. There was no separation, and I could not get back in the proverbial box. So that sense of awakening shattered my perception of reality. The fears, the doubts, the worries, the nagging things that bother human beings were suddenly gone. And all the things I used to worry about, it was like a fantasy. It was like, why was I worried about those things? Why was I worried about death? It doesn't even exist. Why was I worried about loss? You never lose anything significant. Why was I, human beings have this incessant worry about things, always in the future. And that dissolved. It disintegrated at that moment. So I went on a research to discover what had happened to me. And then I bumped into the sacred teachings of many people, as you're talking about, that have had this awakening experience. So what happens is perception expands and you see more of what's real. When I talk about real, I talk about capital R, real. That is, that which is real, that which is eternal, that which is changeless, causeless, birthless, deathless, that which is forever. Not the little reality that we make up for ourselves, but that which is real, never changes up on you. And so your question is, can the average person have this awareness? Absolutely. Everyone is a spiritual being. Everyone is luminous. Everyone carries the light. And everyone is on a path to wake up to their essential nature. Now, when you said your friend is happy and he's joyful, he's making less money than he's had before, but he's still happy, that's an indication that he's in touch with his intrinsic nature. Intrinsically, there's happiness, there's peace, there's love, there's joy. And our intrinsic nature has nothing to do with an external condition. And so before you wake up, you think, oh, if I have these particular things, I'll be happy. After you wake up, you realize you're happy. That's who you are. And then those particular things are added, but they're not the thing itself. So yes, the average, so-called average person is on a path of awakening, and you awaken two ways. One is through pain, and one is through insight. And so the average person basically wakes up through pain. They get sick and tired of being sick and tired. Or there's so much pain or suffering that they come to the end of their proverbial road. They ask a question, what's happening to me? Why can't I be happy? How can I be happy? How can I have more in life? And once they begin to ask those questions, the universe, which is friendly, starts to operate on their behalf, and synchronicity begins to happen. Spontaneous goodness begins to happen. Serendipity begins to happen. And things come into their path like breadcrumbs that pull them into a state of greater and greater awakening. And when they look back, they realize that pain forced them to ask some different questions about life, because what they were doing and what they were having at that time just didn't bring it to them. So there's pain, and then there's insight. Sometimes an individual will have a moment of such sobriety, such clarity. They may look at a sunset, they may see a beautiful picture, they may hear a fantastic song, they may come into agape and hear a message, they may see a bit of choreography, they may look into the beauty of a crystal, and suddenly they may have an insight about the nature of reality, about the nature of their connection, and they can't let it go. They can't get back in the box. Something has happened. And now they go on a hunt to discover what that means for them. But eventually, it's going to happen to everyone. Pain or insight, you're going to come through the door. Now, once you have a model of reality that is coherent with that which is real, and you have some systems for living, then you can begin to diminish the pain, and you begin to increase the bliss, because bliss is actually the function of the activation of your potential. You see, and so yes, the average person can wake up.
And I believe, and I believe what you're sharing in the next portion on systems for living would probably help us wake up through insight rather than pain.
Yes. Yes, and let me define what an insight is. An insight is an event that takes place in consciousness where incrementally or suddenly you know something that you didn't know before, or you know something that you merely believed before. So an insight is when eternity, that which is eternal, becomes active in your awareness. So you become extemporal. You're out of time. You've caught something that maybe you've had a belief, let's say, that the universe is friendly. You had a belief, but you had an insight. An insight means that it became active in you. You suddenly don't just believe this anymore, but it's now in a deep and an abiding knowing.
Mm-hmm.
So consciousness, we're all avenues of awareness. And there's a difference between consciousness and the content of your consciousness. Consciousness is awareness. Content is what's in your awareness. The example I used earlier in the day when I was teaching, you have the ocean, and then you have the ocean's content. You have the ocean, it's water, H2O, a little salt. The content is plankton, seaweed, fish, sewage, pollution. That's all a part of the content, but it's not the ocean. So we have our consciousness, and then there's content. That content are perceptions, beliefs, experiences, opinions, points of view, perspectives. That's all part of content. What happens is when you begin to wake up, you realize you're not the content. You're the awareness. And that's a part of waking up. You wake up, I'm awareness. And with awareness, you now have a greater capacity to choose.
Right.
Because choice is a function of expanded awareness.
That's a beautiful metaphor. That is what this program is about. And that's why it's called consciousness engineering. It's about realizing that your models of reality, I believe when you say content and I say model of reality, we are talking about the plankton. We talk about how in this program, that is not you. Your beliefs are not you. Your beliefs are swappable. You can pluck out that content and put in more content. And so what you're thus saying is that through the exercises you're about to share with us, we help open up our consciousness for this form of content swapping or model swapping.
You swap the content, you swap a lower belief for a higher belief through practice, and you become a candidate for insight, which is a Satori moment, where you suddenly become aware of something that's now you have to integrate, embody, and let it become a part of your way of living.
Right. So just a side note for the students who are going through this program. So if you want to listen to a related interview that fits in with what Michael is talking about, check out the interview with Ken Wilber, where Ken and I discuss God and religion. At the start of the interview, I asked Ken a question from my 7-year-old son, and that is, what comes beyond cosmic centricism? And Ken goes on to describe 4 different levels of human evolution, CC1, CC2, CC3, CC4, which really is where Ken is mapping out what people start experiencing as they go through Satori after Satori after Satori. And it is incredible how he lays out a path of what you actually experience as you start waking up to these different levels. So that's the interview I would recommend. If you haven't done so yet, you listen to after this. Now back to Michael. Michael, we'd love to now get started with the systems you're about to share with us.
Which one shall we start with?
Well, I think the one that you listed, meditation, paying undistractable attention to that which is real.
Right. Now, oftentimes people ask, and I've been teaching meditation for years, and people will ask, how do you meditate? And I have to say, well, first, you don't ask how to meditate, you have to ask what is meditation? Because if you know what, then you'll know how. So I describe meditation as paying undistractable attention to that which is real. Again, capital R, real, that which is eternal. So in meditation, we're having a level of dominion over our attention, to have a level of mindfulness, to ultimately become aware of that which is not transitory, but that which is forever. So I generally set up meditation by, first of all, establishing intention. There's intention, there's attention, there's breath, and there's sitting as if you're sitting for the very first time. There's deep listening, which expands awareness. So start off with intention. When we sit, our intention is, as we've talked about earlier, our intention is to wake up. We establish an intention to wake up. So what I do for people oftentimes is have them remember a moment in their life where the most important thing for them was to wake up. Sometimes a person has come through a major crisis and they prayed, and God, if you get me out of this, I'm really going to do better. And they've had a moment of, all I want to do is just touch reality. I just want to know myself. I want to wake up. I have them remember such a moment in their life. And then feel into the feeling of that, the feeling tone of the intention of the desire to wake up. So you amplify that feeling tone and you sit in the intention. And then you let your attention wrap itself around your intention. So that intention is very real. So that every time you sit, you have an intention to wake up. That's what's driving you. That's what's pulling you. So intention, attention. And then you bring the attention to the breath. Now, as I've taught over the years, you can't breathe in the future and you can't breathe in the past. You can only breathe in present moment. In breath, out breath. Inhalation, exhalation. It's presently happening. As a matter of fact, you don't even have to consciously do it. Your body will do it. It will breathe to receive the oxygen that it needs. So you watch the breath. Now the breath is in present moment. So with your attention on the breath, with your intention to wake up, you little by little come into present moment. You're not in the past, you're not in the future, you're right here. Now the present is a gateway to the now. The now and the present are not the same thing. The past, the present, and the future are tenses in time. In the past, there's a shame and pride. In the future, there's a fear and ambition. In the present, there can be embarrassment and vanity. Your imagination, I can imagine in the present moment that you don't like me and have an experience of that. That can all be happening presently. But when you bring your attention to the breath in the present, it becomes a gateway to the holy now. The now is the eternal, where love and peace, joy, intelligence, and beauty are. They're eternal qualities. So now you become a candidate to move into the now. So you sit and you watch the breath. Every time you sit, two other things. One, you develop what I call a reverential alertness. That is, it's a deep-seated listening, where you sit as if someone was about to tell you the greatest secret in the world. And so it's not passive, it's not active, it's a reverential alertness. You're available to hear with the ear that's beyond the ear. When we deal with the sensorium, the sight and the eyes and the ears, there's that which is in front of the eye, what you see with your eyes and you have a perception. That which is beyond the eye, your cognition, what you think about what you're seeing, and that which is beyond the eye. And that is seeing with consciousness, pure awareness. The same thing with the ear. That which you hear, that which you think about what you hear, and then that which you can hear with consciousness, which is hearing the inaudible. When you see with your consciousness, you see the invisible. So you have a deep listening, so that you're activating this quality within you, and you sit every single time as if this is the very first time you have ever meditated. So you don't enter into it, even though I've been meditating for 40 years. When I sit, this is the first time. So I'm not bringing, even though there's an accruing of benefits, energy over the 40 years, I still sit like this is my very first time. So I don't cloud my present with, oh, I hope I have the same experience that I had yesterday, or, that type of thing. I'm just present. So in meditation, ultimately, you're paying undistractable attention to what's real, which means you can have a nanosecond of seeing, or it can last a half hour, an hour, and go through a whole day. But that's nanosecond of seeing reality changes your life.
The reality with the capital R.
Capital R. You've come out of time. You're no longer time blinded. You see, and it shifts your perception forever. And it begins to integrate into your being, so you start to walk with more of the eternal in your step. You're not bound by circumstance. You're not frustrated by obstacles. You're in the eternal. More creativity, more generosity, more compassion, more patience, more love, because more and more and more you're integrating into now rather than past, present, future. Mm-hmm. So it's intention, attention, breath, deep listening. This is the very first time. When you integrate those into your sitting, whether it's 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 8 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour, and you keep coming back to the breath. And I'm giving this simple technology because you can also watch the sensations in your body. Everything becomes a part of the present. The sounds outside the room become a part of the present. Someone coughing in the next room can be a part of the present. But you no longer see it as a distraction. It's just something happening in the present. And so therefore you learn to be aware of distractions, but without being distracted by them. That's what happens when you mature in meditation. You become aware of distractions, but you're no longer distracted. So you can be aware there's a sound, there's a car driving by, there's a helicopter, somebody just coughed. So what? I'm aware of that distraction, but I'm not distracted. It's present. So everything becomes a part of the field of your sacred meditation, which ultimately leads you to paying undistractable attention to that which is eternal and that which is real.
Intention, attention, breath, feeling as if it's the first time.
And deep listening.
And deep listening.
Yeah.
Could you expand on deep listening? What exactly is deep listening? How is that different from intention or attention?
Listening is a lost art. Now I'm having this conversation with you, and I'm very aware that you're listening to me in a very deep way. The average person doesn't pay attention or listen. They're already thinking about what they're going to say while the other person is speaking. So there's no listening. And so in reverential alertness, I'm listening as if someone was telling me the most important thing in the world. So my full awareness is there. It's like a jewel is about to come out of someone's mouth, and I don't want to miss any of it. So I give them my full attention. You know, good counselors have this skill. You know, they can listen to somebody, and sometimes the person is healed because of the person's listening, you see. So in that same way, when we sit in meditation practice, we develop the capacity to sit and listen as if the universe or the still small voice is going to speak to us, and we have to really pay attention. So it drives us to become more quiet and still, inwardly observant, keenly aware, reverentially alert. It becomes a skill that ultimately becomes a way of living. So you begin to discover that even when you're not formally meditating, you notice that when you're in the world, that these skills carry over. Someone's speaking, you have the capacity to be very quiet and to listen to what they're saying. You're walking, and you suddenly can be keenly aware that the breeze is moving through the leaves of the trees, and you're aware of it. You become aware of your own thoughts, whereas before you were caught up in the content being your identity. You become aware, oh, that's a thought. That's not who I am. That's an opinion. That's not who I am. That's a judgment. That's not who I am. So with deep listening and alertness, you start to be able to discern between who you are and the stuff passing through. And again, this is a part of our awakening process. And believe you me, you don't become a killjoy. When a person starts to wake up, so much joy and happiness, spontaneity, creativity. Sometimes people have an incorrect understanding of people who are walking the spiritual path and think that, they're going to be pious and, they're not going to be able to joke or have fun. Or it's the exact opposite. You take less and less seriously. You take things more and more reverentially, but you're not serious about anything because you're never going to die. You're never going to lose anything significant, and so you have more joy, and so the spiritual person is beyond religion. The spiritual person is in tune with life, and so there's more spontaneous goodness that can happen, you see.
I love that quote. The spiritual person is beyond religion. The spiritual person is more in tune with life. So there's spontaneous goodness that could happen. That should be a t-shirt.
Yeah.
So speaking of that, the next system for living that you were going to share with us is the idea of prayer, touching reality without trying to get anything from it. Now, a lot of people develop a negative idea of the word prayer because in so many religions around the world, it is something that from the time you're a child, you are forced to do. So I'd love to hear you talk about prayer.
When we speak about prayer, prayer is an indication of an individual's belief of what they think about the Holy Presence. If you think the Holy Presence is anthropomorphic, a man in the sky, then you're going to beg, beseech, plead, manipulate, try to get God to do something for you, And as you've talked to Ken Wilber, that there are different stages of unfoldment for humanity, and there are individuals who've come out of that superstitious, magical stage, But ultimately, when you become aware, or even if you have the belief, you're not even aware of it yet, but you have a belief that this presence is it's omnipresence. It's everywhere. And this presence is not only everywhere, the presence can't contradict its own nature. It can't work against itself. So as one scripture would say, it is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Changeless. So you can't pray to change God's mind. So prayer then becomes a technology by which you touch reality, but you're not trying to get anything from it. You're placing yourself in a position to have an inner realization that what you're praying for you already have. So you're opening yourself up to an existential encounter with that which is true about you. So if you feel lack in your life, that's not true, because abundance is a part of your nature. So you're praying to have a realization about your abundant nature. You're praying to have a realization about your joy. It's already here. It's just covered up by perceptions. You're praying to have a realization of the love that is here. You don't feel it because it's covered up by experience. So so prayer becomes like a blowtorch by which you're dissolving the false beliefs so that you ultimately are touching and having a realization about reality. So I always teach that you begin your prayer with gratitude. You begin to be aware of, you're just grateful for, and there's 3 levels of gratitude. You can be grateful for what you have. You can be grateful for the challenges, because you know that the challenges are bearing the possibility of uncovering latent power that's within you. Without the challenge, couldn't be activated. And then you eventually grow to where you're just grateful for nothing. You just, you have no reason to be grateful, but you're grateful. And that's a very high state of consciousness. And as I teach from time to time, parents used to say to children, if you don't stop crying, I'm going to give you something to cry about. Well, the universe says something differently. If you don't stop being grateful, I'm going to give you something to be grateful for. So, and so we begin our prayer with a deep sense of gratitude that cleanses the perceptual windows. And then we begin to become aware from gratitude that we are at one with this life. We begin to feel so unified with it. And then from that state of prayer, we begin to have a realization that what we're praying for, we already have. And then we come back to thanksgiving and release. Now, this is taught in different ways in many what is called New Thought communities. But I have my own take on it, and I always begin with gratitude. I think once you enter into a field of gratitude, your perceptual windows become more clean. So rather than waiting to an end of prayer to be grateful, I begin in gratitude and begin in seeing that this presence is everywhere, and then feeling my unity with it, and then feeling that I already have what I'm praying for. So that's what prayer is. It's not the Sunday school kind of prayer where now I lay me down to sleep, I pray to God my soul to keep, and if I should die before I wake, I pray to God my soul to take. No, that's a fearful prayer. Nor do we pray for God to give us something, because we can't change God's mind, and the presence has already given us everything. We just have to uncover it. So prayer is, as we described earlier, it's touching that which is real without trying to get anything from it, and having a realization. The key word is realization. Having a realization that I already have it. See?
How do you bring your prayer practice and your meditation practice together? What does it look like for you?
It looks like I will sit and I will become still, and I will move into a period of meditation. And then, as that period of meditation comes to an end, I move into prayer. I begin to declare and decree and proclaim and announce and have a realization, a description about an area of my life, or a friend's life, or a colleague's life, or someone who would ask me to pray for them. I will begin to speak the word verbally, outside. I mean loud. I mean not loud, but verbally, so I can actually hear my own words. It's a certain vibration. I do pray silently. But if I'm by myself, I pray. And when I'm with the community, I pray out loud. And when I'm by myself, I also pray out loud, because I think it has an effect with you hearing your own words. So I would actually, start off with I'm so grateful to be awake, aware, and alive, and to feel my oneness with the grand presence of life itself, and to know that I am what thou art, and thou art what I am. And it is in this moment that I speak the word, knowing that my life is a vehicle and an instrument for divine compassion and peace and love and abundance. And everyone I touch today will feel the presence of love and feel their significance in the universe. I feel that all of my needs are met. I give thanks for this, and I let it be, and so it is, so be it, amen. It'll flow something like that. Never walking in the same river twice, same spot, but a flow of gratitude, recognizing the presence, unifying with the presence, having a realization, being thankful and releasing it. So I'm not begging. I'm actually working on myself, not God. I'm working on myself to be the right condition for that which is already here to be revealed.
So let's touch on that for a moment, because I know that's going to create a couple of ahas in people's mind. You said you're not asking God, you are working on yourself so that you have the right conditions for that to be revealed. Explain in your model of the world, what is God and what is yourself?
Yes. When we talk about the presence of God, I'm talking about a presence that's never an absence. So this is the presence that is everywhere. And some people would say that this presence, God, is in everything. I say everything is in God. So everything is in this field of love, intelligence, love, beauty, intelligence is the nature of God. Infinite and everywhere. And you and I, we are emanations of this presence. So all that the presence is, we are. There's no separation. So our life is an emanation of the only life that there is. And what are we doing? We're waking up and becoming more and more conscious that we are emanations of this life, and because this life is infinite, And there are no cookie cutters people. There are no extra people. There's no do-overs. There's no repeats. The presence has never repeated itself. So it didn't make two of you, didn't make three of me, it didn't make, it made one of us. We're unique. So it gets to reveal its infinite nature through our uniqueness. So you're significant, I'm significant. I get to reflect and to reveal the cosmos as only I can. You get to reflect and reveal the cosmos as only you can. Not only do we get to, it's a mandate that we do. Because this presence recreated us so that it could reveal its own infinite nature through us. So the presence is everywhere. So when you look at a much smaller consciousness, for instance, you go to the Bible as an example, and you go to an Old Testament, and you see a story of God looking for Adam and Eve in the garden. Now we know that's an allegory, and we also know that it's written by someone who had a very small consciousness. In other words, they had a God that was made like a man that lost Adam. So how can an infinite being not be aware of its own creation? You see, so that's an evolution of consciousness from a very small tribal awareness. God is looking around. Where's Adam? Where's Eve? Where's Adam? To all the way to a much more evolved state where you have Christ consciousness, Krishna consciousness, Buddha consciousness, cosmic awareness, and more expanded awareness. And what is that? That means if we have cosmic awareness, we're becoming aware that this presence is cosmic and even beyond the cosmos. It's cosmos with the C and this cosmos with the K. I mean, our friend that you mentioned earlier talks about this, with the K, that's the infinite, invisible, unmanifest reality that's beyond. So when we talk about God, we're talking about something that is infinite, a presence that's here totally. Now, this is what people have to get. It's totally where you are. In other words, you and I, we're not just parts of God. We're the fullness of God, because God can't break itself into parts. It is fully present everywhere. Now, when I woke up many years ago, I could see that. I could see the presence in a table, a piece of lint, the tree, the butterfly, my life. This presence fully everywhere. And we, at this stage of evolution, with reflective consciousness, meaning we can think about what we think about, we're becoming more fully orbed to have that awareness of the cosmic, the presence, everywhere, you see. It's wonderful.
Oh man, I love your excitement when you describe these models. For the people who are listening, who might be raised within a religious practice, say Islam or Hinduism or Buddhism, where there's a particular method of prayer, how do we take ideas from what you just shared and integrate that with our personal cultural practices? Do you have any advice for that?
Well, we find that happening and occurring frequently at Agape. Because Agape, they call us the United Nations of Spiritual Communities, because we have Christians, Buddhists, Muslims, Jains, Jews, everyone worshiping together. And so what I teach is presence and principle. So this presence, it is a presence, as I've just described, but there are certain principles that you find in all religions. Just as there are physical principles, aerodynamic, law of buoyancy, there's electrical principles. There are certain principles, water boils at a particular, but there's spiritual principles. And when you really go into the different religions, you'll see the principles there. But they're hidden by the culture of the religion. And so, Muhammad, bless him, would say it in a certain way. Jesus would say it in a certain way. It's done unto you as you believe. Buddha would say it in a certain way. Talk about attachment, talking about your imagination. You are what you think. We can go through all of the religions and you'll find them. The teacher in that religion will basically speak to you either in metaphors, riddles, or principles. And if you study those principles, you'll find they run through all the religions, particularly the religion that was built around an individual that had the insight of their oneness with life itself. And so we don't invite people to give up their religion when they come. We invite them because, for instance, we have Jewish people that come and they become better Jews. They call themselves, they say things like, I'm not Jewish anymore, I'm Joyish. The Christians come in and they say, wow, I used to be Christian, now I follow the teachings of Jesus. It was before they were kind of indoctrinated into a kind of a fundamental awareness. The Buddhists come in and before they would think they were going to go into some null and void thing when they got into nirvana. Now they realize they're not going to lose their individuality. When they merge into oneness, their individuality is an expression of the evolution of God. You're not going to go back into an amorphous nothing, So everyone gets to evolve their religion based upon the presence and practices, you see. So it's a very wonderful experiment that we're doing here.
That almost brings tears to my eyes. I love how you bring all of that together. So for those of you who are listening, what you just learned are ways to refine your prayer practice, to combine it with your meditation practice. I know, Michael, that many people who are going through this transformation, I grew up in a Hindu culture, in a Muslim country. I'm married to a Christian, so I'm exposed to so many different world religions.
Right.
And finally, I decided to just become spiritual, but not religious. But I still really appreciate all of these different cultures. And so it was really nice to hear you reconcile them, because that was one of the challenges I went through as I was waking up. I couldn't reconcile them. And it created so much stress and drama, being able to look at my cultural traditions of my family and feeling that they didn't gel with me, but knowing that that might hurt other people. So thank you for that, for helping us see how both of these could fit.
Absolutely. Now, you can see the different deities as different infinite aspects of the presence.
Right.
And understand that those are qualities of the presence. Whether you call them by whatever name you call them in Hinduism, they're expressions of the spirit, Yeah.
You were going to talk about life visioning.
Yes.
As a process beyond visualization, which makes us receptive to the divine vision of our lives beyond the preconceived notions of an imbalanced egoic mind bound by limiting beliefs.
Yes. Now, everyone pretty much knows about creative imagination or visualization. Mm-hmm. Many people have, cut their teeth on that kind of practice. You see what you want. You feel that you have it, you bring it into manifestation. There's nothing wrong with visualization at all. It's a wonderful evolutionary stage in an individual that's walking the spiritual path. The only thing about visualization is that it has a level of limitation because you can only visualize what you know already. You can take a picture out of a magazine and do a vision board. You can look at somebody else's life and visualize that for yourself, so it's within a certain paradigm. Visioning is catching an idea outside of your present paradigm so that you're making yourself receptive to the spiritual idea that the universe wants to birth through you that you may not know about. In other words, you may be enculturated by your society, by your religion. In the Western world, we have all these models of success. You're successful if you have a house and 2 kids, a picket fence, 2 cars. People get that and they're not happy. But someone could visualize that and manifest it and realize, oh my God, I'm still unhappy. Visioning is different. Visioning begins with the spiritual idea that there is planted within each and every one of us a powerful destiny, a powerful, unique way that the universe wants to express itself. So instead of telling the universe what we want, we instead ask a question. What does what is the universe's idea of my life? And we begin to catch that idea. What is my growing edge? What must I become to manifest that vision? What do I already have in my house that I can use to serve the vision? What must I let go of? What does willingness look like? We ask a different kind of question because here's a hierarchy of questions. Behind every problem, there's a question trying to ask itself. Universe being progressive. Behind every question, there's an answer trying to reveal itself. Behind every answer, there's an action trying to take place. And behind every action, there's a way of life trying to be born. So a problem, the word problem comes from emblem. It's emblematic of the content of consciousness that's being projected onto the screen of life. Because the universe is progressive, the universe wants you to ask a question. So if you have a problem, you have to ask a question. What is the nature of reality? What is the nature of prosperity? What is the nature of love? The universe will start to answer that. After it answers that, it will start to give you an action to take. And then it will birth itself into a way of living. So visioning begins with the question. You can say, what is God's idea of itself as my life? So analogies are poor sometimes to use, but if an acorn were to go into the visioning process, it would say, what is God's idea of itself as my life? It would begin to see an oak tree that had never existed before, an oak tree that is so unique that there would be no other oak tree like it. And it would say, well, what do I need to become for this oak tree to manifest? Well, you're going to have to die to your littleness. The acorn's going to have to crack open. It's going to have to be planted in the right condition. It's going to have to let go of its smallness. It's going to have to embrace the infinite field of divine possibility within its soul. Eventually, the condition is right. It becomes an oak tree. There are things within us that we have no idea that are even there because we've been indoctrinated by the society in which we are living. A high-tech, low-touch society, consumerism, materialism, fear, doubt, worry. And so we visualize what we think we want to be happy. Nothing wrong with that. But beyond that, there's a gift, a talent, a capacity within us all that's trying to emerge. Robert Browning indicated, there's an inner splendor, that's trying to escape. So the visioning process invites the inner splendor to come up that may shock our surface mind. It may surprise us as to what's trying to emerge and what we must become. And now, outside of our present paradigm, the miraculous is there. It's something trying to happen through us, and we keep growing and growing. So visualization is a stage of our spiritual growth. It teaches us there's a law in the universe, teaches us the friendliness of the universe. It teaches us that our thoughts transmute themselves into things. It teaches us that things don't just happen, they happen just. It's a good teaching stage. But then once we become comfortable and realize that the universe is friendly, we can begin to give up control and ask a higher question. And now we lose control, we move into surrender. That's the big game. That's the big game right there.
I went through that experience in the last 2 years. So basically, and I'm going to share this with all of you listening as well, because you're familiar with my 6 days meditation or my creative visualization program with Lisa Nichols. And in all of those programs, and the way I was living my life is I would have my 12 to 15 to 20 goals of what I wanted. It was the dream car, the dream home, the dream company, the dream amount in my bank account. And sometime last year, so this started about 1 year ago, I started going through a remarkable series of problems. But every problem would emerge, from that problem would emerge, as you said, a question. And then from the question, what did you say happens next?
After the question, there's an answer.
An answer.
And then an action.
An action.
And then a new way of life.
A new way of life that emerged. So through these series of problems, and I felt like my entire life was collapsing around with me. And this was me. This was less than a year ago. it reached a stage where all of a sudden I began to realize that none of those goals mattered and that I was really a servant of God. I used to have difficulty even saying the word God because I came from such a religious background which was so stifling. I decided to give up religion. And all of a sudden, I started praying to God of the universe. My meditations changed from visualizing all the things and the way my life was going to be to simply using a phrase from Neil Donald Walsh, let the divine enter, and then asking that divine to shape my day and shape my weeks and shape my month
Yes.
in a way where I can serve what the universe needs me to serve.
Yes.
And that's really how my meditation evolved. Now, but here's the problem I'm having, and I'd love for you to answer this. If I do that, what happens to all the things that I so enjoy having right now? The car, the wonderful family, the company I'm building.
You have those things, but they don't have you. It's a different perception. You still have a car. I still have a car. I still have a house. You know, I still have clothes, but they don't have me. You see, so there's a shift from you having those things to them not having you. So it's not that you don't have goals anymore, but they're in the context of a larger purpose. Mm-hmm. So here's what I teach: there's task-oriented people, goal-oriented people, and purposeful-oriented people. People that have task only, they have no goals. They're like building castles in the sand. The wave is going to come and knock them away. Then there are goal-oriented people. But they have to do tasks to achieve their goals. Sometimes they achieve their goals, they're still not happy. Then there's purposeful-oriented people. As you're talking about surrendering to this gigantic, dynamic life, you have a purpose, and that purpose will include goals and tasks, but you're living in your purpose, you see. So it's a much higher way of being. So you don't give up goals, you don't give up tasks, but you're living at a meta goal level and a meta task level. It's trans task and trans goal, but you still have them, but they don't run you. So therefore, you don't have ambition. Ambition, the word ambi, you know, that person's ambidextrous. Ambition means you're going in two directions at the same time. You're trying to get to your goal, but you're simultaneously afraid you're not going to get there.
Right.
So you have this ambition. But when you're living your purpose, you're now pulled by a vision. When you're living under a goal-oriented model, you're pushed. You need motivation. Motivation is where visualization is. Inspiration is where surrender is. Inspiration pulls, motivation pushes. You see? So you end up being, when you announced how you pray now you're more pulled by a larger purpose and a larger vision. You're not pushed, you're pulled. You still have a car. You still can have nice things, but that's not your goal. That's just added stuff. It's nice stuff. Oh, you got a nice car. Okay, it's beautiful. But you're not going to be one of those people that if somebody scratches it, you go ballistic. You just go get it fixed. Somebody who thinks they're their car, the car owns them, they get it scratched, they want to get into a fight on the highway. You bumped my car, I'm going to fight you. Just an accident. But when you realize, okay, I can have a car, but the car doesn't have me, somebody nicks it? Yeah, somebody nicked a piece of metal. I just go get it fixed. You know, it's no big deal.
So then if you look at the evolution of human awareness, there is the stage where you believe life is happening to you. All the problems, all the crap happening is happening to you. You evolve to a stage where you realize that you, to some degree, can control life. Coincidences, synchronicities, manifesting, creative visualization. But the stage above that, the next stage you awaken to, is where you realize you don't have to control life. Life is so friendly. The universe is so in support of you. All you got to do is sit back and listen.
Yes.
And so in a way, you go from intention to inspiration.
Yes, and surrender.
And surrender.
Yeah.
So, and from the inspiration, and that leads to the question. I was reading this book by Joe Vitale. It was about the Hawaiian Kahuna spiritual practices. And he says, at a certain level, you realize, you got to ask yourself, are your goals, are you creating the world through intention? Or are you creating the world because the universe is giving you inspiration? and then you're going out and doing what the world needs to be done.
Yes, absolutely. What you just described are what are my 4 stages of spiritual growth, development, and unfoldment. Back in 1985, 84, I came up with these 4 stages to describe, and now this is pretty much commonplace in our language, but the first stage is victim stage, and you think life is doing something to you. Second stage is the manifester. The first stage is to us, the second stage is by us. We use our mind and our mind power and our visualization to do something. The third stage is through us, where we're an instrument, we're a channel. Life is operating through us. And the fourth stage is as us, where the sense of separation dissolves and we realize, oh my God, I'm it. The universe has been playing tag with me all along. Tag, you're it. You see, there's no separation. So as you move into those through us and as us, that's when you are allowing, yielding, letting go. First stage, you're giving up blame in order to take responsibility for your life. Mm-hmm. The second stage, you're giving up control in order to be a channel. The third stage, you're giving up a personal sense of separation to be a place of being. So you described it very fluidly and very powerfully. Those are 4 stages that we incrementally move through in our spiritual practice.
So I think we all have an idea of what that second stage looks like, right? When you are creating the world, you have your goals, but what do your goals look like? As you are in the third or the fourth stage, when you get to that third stage and life is flowing and you are using inspiration to figure out how you can best serve the universe, what do your goals look like? Are they guiding principles, rough visions, values that pull you forward?
It's a vision, and the vision has something to do with being a greater instrument of service, not just for my little self, but for humanity, the world, the nation, the state, the city, the neighborhood. So the visions that come bring me to the point of being a stronger vehicle to be able to give more, to share more, to circulate more. It's more generosity, more compassion, more kindness, more flow. So it's not about getting another car.
Right.
It's not about getting another house. It's about how to be of greater service at that level.
So the question I've had, so when I made this leap, for example, my personal goals disappeared and it was reduced to 3 different fundamental values. I seek to be always surrounded by love. I seek to always have beautiful human experiences, and I seek to always be learning and growing. Those are my goals. Those are literally all the goals I have right now in my personal life.
That's it.
But I found that I feel, at least, and I'd love to know how you see it, is that you got to have at least some values. So my values are love, experiences, and growth.
Yeah.
Do you have at least guiding values or pillars?
My values are love and growth. I live life as an adventure. Mm-hmm. Of the great discovery of more of my greater yet to be, unconditional and all-conditional love, and to be an emissary and an ambassador of peace and generosity.
I see.
That's what runs through me. But I'm always on the edge of growth and greater discovery of my infinite potential.
Right.
I think the universe abhors, they say, well, the universe abhors a vacuum.
Mm-hmm.
I say the universe abhors wasted potential. Because the universe gets to come into its own through the activation of potential. And what's the indication of that? Bliss.
Right.
When we're in bliss, we've activated some potential within us that was lying dormant before. Yeah.
So life visioning helps us take that step.
Oh, life visioning is a strong technology for transformation, becoming more ourselves, activating our destiny, and living a life that's beyond our wildest imaginings.
But how do you go from 3 to 4?
You can't do it with your mind. As your surrender deepens, you have an insight again. Oh my God, I'm at one with life. Now when you look at, like the Buddha, you look at Jesus, you can see the stages. You can see Jesus, victim, Garden of Gethsemane. Why is this happening to me? If I could pass this bitter cup from my lips, I would. But then he goes on to say, not my will, thy will be done. He was already very adept in stage 2, doing healings, walking on water, doing a bunch of stuff, in the life of Jesus. Stage 3, not my will, thy will be done. Stage 3, it's not me that's doing the work. It's the presence of God within me that does the work. Stage 4, when you see me, you see he who sent me. I and my Father are one. So you can see he operated in all those stages. The stages aren't linear.
Right.
You may find yourself one day feeling victimized in one area of your life, but you're in flow zone in another area of your life until you work out the content in that area, and then you find, oh, I've surrendered. You see. Yeah. So to go from 3 to 4, everyone has a little bit of a personal sense of a life apart from God. Sometimes you'll find it in your prayer. You'll go into prayer and you find yourself praying outward to God. It's a small sense of separation rather than having an interior awareness that your life is the life of God. And then in meditation, you'll have an insight. Oh my God, it's me. Not ego, but this life, this is an irreducible, unique, authentic, eternal expression of the infinite. Wow. And it may last a second. It may last an hour. The residue may continue for a long time. But the personal sense of separation dissolves. Comes back, dissolves, comes back, dissolves, comes back. I remember I've been in states where the sense of separation was dissolved for long periods of time, and then it would come back and I'd have part of my identity, But in your spiritual practice, it's like sandpaper. It kind of little by little dissolves.
Thank you, Michael. That was so profound. This is one of the most enjoyable conversations I've had with someone on this program.
Thank you.
And you helped me, and I gotta give you credit for this, because as I've been going through I'm going through some interesting challenges right now, but you've helped me see that these problems are simply going to lead to answers and then
Yes.
solutions, then whole new ways of life
Yes.
in terms of how I'm choosing to live my life.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Any final words or things you'd like to share before we end?
I would just say that I just want people to know that if they could just feel how intensely loved they are by the universe, they would lose all sense of abandonment issues and all sense of loneliness. That you can actually be by yourself and be alone without being lonely. And you could be by yourself and feel so totally loved. I have touched it and tasted it and felt it and feel it on a regular basis. This presence, which is never an absence, it totally loves us. It's totally for us. And if we start to become for ourselves, the way the universe is for us, not in an egocentric manner, there's just no obstacle, no hindrance to our joy and to our happiness. And we become great servants of the light, great, prosperous, generous beings that love to give. I teach you give to live until you live to give. That's the evolutionary art. You live to give. You give to live. And then something happens, then you wake up and you actually live to give. It's a shift.
Thank you, Michael.
It's my joy.
Amazingly said. It was wonderful having you.
Thank you. My joy.
So to wrap up, for those of you listening, I would recommend you listen to the following interviews following this one with Michael. Me and Ken Wilber on God, Religion, and a New Model for Spirituality. With Emily Fletcher, who's the meditation instructor for Google, where you'll get to experience another style somewhat similar to what Michael teaches, where you get to experience meditation. And finally, Kamal Ravikant, the Silicon Valley investor, where he'll talk about the power of self-love, which is just what Michael ended with. Hope you enjoyed this call. Thank you for being part of this program.